This is the history of Thomas Walter Smith and his family. Our story begins with his earliest known documentation. We first find him listed in the 1880 U.S. Census. He is living with his family in Mumford, Talladega County, Alabama. He is 8 years old. The family consists of 8 members. The head of household is Margaret, mother of Rena and maternal grandmother of Thomas. She is 51 years old. Her surname is erroneously listed as Smith. Her married name was actually McWhirter, and her maiden name was Mitchell. Though of poor quality, we are lucky to have this photograph of Margaret when she was married to Moses Allen McWhirter on July 8, 1857, at Shelby County, Alabama. Next is Rena, daughter of Margaret and Thomas's mother. Her full name is Serena Frances Smith. She is 25 years old. Next is Rena's sister Nancy. Like Margaret, her surname should be listed as McWhirter. She is 16 years old. The only boy is Thomas, grandson of Margaret and son of Rena. He is 8 years old. Next is Lila. She is 6 years old. Later, she will be called Minnie. Then comes Thomas's sister Effie. She is 4 years old. The final member of the family is Thomas's sister Jessie. She is only 1 year old. Normally, we could research Thomas in the 1890 U.S. Census. Unfortunately, in 1920, a fire in the basement of the U.S. Commerce Building in Washington, D.C., destroyed almost the entirety of the 1890 census records. Therefore, the next item we can review is from Laura Isabel Poteet's autograph book. Its cover is rose velveteen and is approximately 4 inches by 6 inches. The earliest entries begin in 1892. Therefore, it appears she was about 17 or 18 years old when she began collecting autographs. The one of most interest was written by Thomas Walter Smith and reads, Ozone, Arkansas, December 27, 1892.
Dear Laura, may your cheeks return their dimples. May your heart be just as gay, until some manly voice shall whisper, Dearest, will you name the day?
TWS. Thomas Walter Smith. We next jump forward 188 days to June 1, 1893. Here we have a marriage license for Thomas W. Smith of Ozone, Johnson County, Arkansas, aged 21, and Laura J. Poteet of Clarksville, Johnson County, Arkansas, aged 18. What followed on the 4th of June 1893 is their marriage by W.K. Schultz. In our family's collection of memorabilia, we found a photograph taken at that wedding. Unfortunately, it is in very poor condition. However, retouching using computer programs has significantly improved the image quality. We are sure that the gentleman holding what appears to be a Bible is none other than Mr. W.K. Schultz. Here we zoom in on Thomas and Laura. We also found portraits, which appear to have been taken about the same time. Here is Thomas. And here is Laura. Looking again at Laura's autograph book, we find 2 entries by Thomas's sister Minnie. The first reads,
Compliments and wishes of happy and prosperous life. June 4th, 1893.
Minnie.
The second appears to record the actual time frame of the wedding of Thomas and Laura. Though it is not signed, it is obviously Minnie's handwriting.
Ever remember this day from 4 o'clock until 6. June 4th, 1893.
Following are 2 photographs of Thomas and Laura's children that were taken in 1895. Here is Jewel, their first child, who was born January 27, 1894, in Eureka Springs, Johnson County, Arkansas. She is holding her brother Bernice. And here is Bernice in his beautiful christening gown. He was born on April 14, 1895 in Ozone, Johnson County, Arkansas. The next documentation available is the 1900 census. We find Thomas, Laura, and their 3 children living in Clarksville, Spadra Township, Johnson County, Arkansas. Thomas is the head of household. He was born in January of 1872, is 28 years old, and has been married for 7 years. Laura is shown as born in May of 1875 and is 25 years old. Additionally, it also indicates that she has had 4 children, but only 3 are still alive. More about that later. The oldest child is their daughter Jewel, shown born in March of 1894. She is 6 years old. The middle child is their son Harold, shown born in April of 1895. He is 5 years old. Later, he will go by Bernice, his middle name. The last child is their daughter Velma. She was born in April of 1896 and is 4 years old. The child that did not survive was Linny. She was born on August 16, 1896, and died on June 17, 1897. She was buried in the Oakland Cemetery in Clarksville, Johnson County, Arkansas. The only known photograph of Lenny is this tintype that is in extremely poor condition. Fortunately, someone who we believe was a family member made this beautiful drawing from the tintype. It was done in pastels on heavy cardboard and measures approximately 11 by 17 inches.
Here are the 3 children. Left to right are Velma, Bernice, and Jewel. Based on Velma's 1896 birth date, we have assumed this was taken in 1897. In this photograph, they appear to be much closer to the 4, 5, and 6 years of age recorded in the 1900 census. Left to right are Bernice, Jewel, and Velma. Obviously taken at the same time, they have repositioned left to right to Jewel, Bernice, and Velma. With the 1900 census showing their ages as 28 and 25, we think that this photograph of Thomas and Laura was taken at about the same time as the previously shots of their children.
The story of Thomas continues with his involvement with a tragic accident that occurred on September 18, 1903. At that time, he was employed by the Spadra Anthracite Coal Company in Johnson County, Arkansas. He was working inside their large coal tipple when it suddenly collapsed. Tragically, men were killed, and others, including Thomas, were injured. The Johnson County Graphic reported that Joe James and Joe Burglar were killed. 3 others were seriously wounded, while John Walton and Tom Smith were slightly wounded. There were many conjectures as to why the tipple fell. Was it improperly braced or overloaded with coal and machinery? No final conclusion was ever produced. We now move on to the 1910 U.S. Census. Here we find Thomas and his family still living in the Spadra Township of Johnson County, Arkansas. His family has now grown to 7 members. That includes Thomas as head of household. He is 38 years old and has been married for 16 years. His wife Laura, who is 35 years old. Also recorded is that Laura has had 7 children, but only 6 are still alive. The oldest child is their 15-year-old daughter Jewel, here erroneously spelled with only one L. Next is the oldest boy, Bernice. Note that he was originally recorded as a daughter, but the error was corrected. He is 14. Then it's daughter Velma, who is 13. Followed by son Bryce, aged 9. Son Ennis, aged 8. And finally, their 5-year-old son Forrest. Additional information can be gleaned from the 1910 census. Column 19 shows that Thomas was employed in general farm work. Column 20 indicates that he worked for himself and not an employer. Columns 21 and 22 show that he was not out of work on April 15th of 1910, and that he has had 0 days of unemployment during 1909. Under the education section, we note that both Thomas and Laura could read and write. That all of the children, with the exception of 5-year-old Forrest, could read, write, and had attended school since September 1st of 1909. Under ownership of home, we see that Thomas owned their home instead of renting. That it was free of a mortgage. That it was a farm and not a house. The 50 in the last column is used to record the number assigned to the specific farm's separate agricultural schedule. Only one photograph has been found of the family circa 1910. We have Jewel standing on the left. Thomas is next in the middle. Then Laura on the right. Then, sitting from left to right in the photograph are Velma, Bernice, Forrest, Bryce, and Ennis. Moving on to 1911, we find that the size of Thomas's family had a significant increase from 8 to 11 in just one day. On December 3, 1911, Laura gave birth to triplets, Roy, Robert, and Effie. According to the newspaper, both the mother and the babies were all doing well. Here are Robert, Effie, and Roy dressed in wonderful christening gowns. We are grateful that we have such a wealth of photographs and documents in our family's collection. We wonder if Thomas bought these baby carriages in Spadra or if he had to go into Clarksville to find them. In this awesome picture, we see the family in their wagon as they return from church. Thomas and Laura are holding Roy, Effie, and Robert. Bryce is driving. Forrest is in the middle, and partially hidden is Ennis. Bernice and the older girls are not present. In this picture of the 2 older Smith girls, Jewel is driving the horse-drawn wagon, while Velma is sitting to her left. The girl on the right is a friend of the family. Thomas and Laura were members of the Knights and Ladies of Honor, an early fraternal organization. This is an article from that group's periodical publication describing the family and their 1-year-old triplets. And here are Roy, Effie, and Robert standing in those beautiful dresses. On January 26, 1914, the family suffered another tragedy in the loss of their most recent child. Annie Laura died of pneumonia. She was born on September 24, 1913. This is a photograph of Thomas taken with little Annie Laura shortly before she passed. And here is Laura holding her baby. You can see the concern in the mother's expression. The officers and members of the Knights and Ladies of Honor, the Smiths Fraternal Organization, provided them with this resolution of sympathy.
'Tis said God takes from this world of ours its fairest birds and brightest flowers. And it is sweet to know that this little one is safe in the arms of Jesus.
Here is another awesome photograph from our family's collection. Standing in back is Luther Norvell, holding his daughter Bertie Lee. She was born on November 2, 1913. This dates the picture to mid-1914. Next to Luther is his wife Jewel and her younger brother Bernice Smith. Sitting on chairs are Thomas, and then Laura, who is holding Effie on her lap. Roy and Robert are standing on each side of their father. Then, sitting on the ground are Forrest, Ennis, and Bryce. This photograph of Laura and the triplets appears to have been taken at the same time as that of the family group. Left to right are Robert, Effie, and Roy. Moving on to about 1917, we have a family gathering on the porch of Thomas and Laura's home in Clarksville, Arkansas. On the left are Laura and Thomas. Sitting on the steps are the triplets, with two of their cousins. Left to right are Effie Smith, Bertie Lee Norvell, Robert Smith, Anna Laura Norvell, and Roy Smith. On the right side are William Henry and Lovanda Jane Storms Poteet, Laura's parents. And on the end is their son, James Andrew Poteet. Finally, standing left to right are Luther Lee and Jewel Smith Norvell, parents of the two Norvell girls. Then, partially hidden, is Velma Smith Dickerson and her husband Fred Welcome Dickerson. Next is Mary Ruth Lee Smith. Then Forrest Smith, who is standing in front of Harold Bernice Smith, Ruth's husband. The last two are Walter Bryce and Ennis Rudolph Smith. This is the Thomas Smith family home in Clarksville, Arkansas, circa 1915. Note the rocking chairs on the covered porch. Another picture of the Smith home in Clarksville, Arkansas, with the triplets standing on the steps. Here they are, posing with Dixie, their family's dog, and their cousin Bertie Lee Norvell. Here's a studio portrait of the triplets decked out in Edwardian-era finery. The boys are in Little Lloyd Fauntleroy suits. And Effie is wearing a knee-length dress, a common style for young girls in the early 20th century. The dress features a plaid pattern on the blouse and a solid, lighter-colored skirt. One of the family's favorite recreation was to walk to the iron bridge across Spadger Creek. Here is Effie sitting on the creek bank just below the bridge. And here are Roy and Robert, up on the bridge. That old iron bridge is still in use today as part of the Spadger Creek Nature Trail that is being maintained by the City of Clarksville Parks Department. Here are some early photographs of Clarksville, taken from the internet. Thomas was a retail merchant owning a store somewhere in town. Unfortunately, we have no photograph of the store or even know exactly where it was. Both Effie and Roy said that it was primarily a feed store, though he also had other merchandise for sale. However, we do know that he sold the store prior to September 22, 1919. That evidence comes from the date on the envelope of a letter sent to Thomas by his sister Minnie Smith Barnes. Minnie's husband Frank Barnes had written to Thomas, and Minnie added several pages. In part she writes,
Dear brother, I'll write you some too. I have wrote till I'm getting tired. Why did you sell your store? Did you get tired of it?
At about this same time, the younger children were still in grade school. Here is Roy and Robert and Effie and in the same school, but in a higher grade, is their older brother Forrest. In 1920, Thomas and his family are now living in Clarksville, Johnson County, Arkansas. There are now 9 members, including Thomas, as head of household, aged 48, and then his wife Laura, aged 44. Next is Bryce, age 19. And then we jump all the way down to Elsie, who at age 18 is married to Bryce and is listed as Thomas's daughter-in-law. Returning up to the other children, there is Ennis at 18 years, Forrest at 14, and then the triplets, Roy, Robert, and Effie, each obviously with the same 8 years of age. The 3 older children were all still living in Clarksville, Arkansas. Here is Jewel, aged 24, with her husband Luther. They had married on February 2, 1913. Their daughter Bertie Lee is 6, and her sister Anna Laura is 7 months. Berna's married Mary Ruth Lee on May 13, 1918. Berna's is 24. Ruth is 22. And their son Harold is only 5 months old. And finally, there is Velma, who married Fred Dickerson on May 30, 1913. Fred is 24. Velma is 23. And their daughter Mildred is shown as 4 years and 2 months of age. In the early to mid-1920s, Thomas moved his family from Clarksville, Arkansas to Sugar Pine, California. The route depicted on this map is only a guess, with the exception of a short section to the west of Yuma, Arizona. That is because Effie distinctly remembered their driving across the desert on a roadway made from wooden planks. Here are a couple of photographs taken from the internet that show section of that actual roadway. The historical marker for the remaining portion states that it was in use between 1914 and 1927. That conforms to when we think the family's pilgrimage was made. In Sugar Pine, the family lived in one of the company's houses. Thomas, as well as Bryce, Ennis, and Forrest were all employees. We believe all lived separate homes. This is a picture at the Madera Sugar Pine Lumber Company's mill and yard. And here is the company's store and houses in the winter. A notation on the back of this picture states that it was taken from the front porch of the Thomas Smith home. Here, the triplets and their young nephew Thomas, whose nickname was Dubby, are standing near a walkway just above their home. Due to the steep slope, wood crossblock have been added to the walkway. Here, Thomas and Laura pose with Rose, the wife of their son Forrest. Though there is no date on this picture, it appears to have been taken in the late 1920s. Effie is sitting on her mother's lap, while Roy and Robert stand behind. In another awesome photograph from the family's collection, the triplets are pictured with their teacher, Ruth Hoffman, and the complete 1925 student body of the Flume School in Sugar Pine. Here is Roy, Robert, and Effie. Though appearing prim and stern, Effie said she was a wonderful teacher and all the children loved her. Because Effie was the curator of the family photos and memorabilia, many of the documents pertain directly to her. This is her 8th grade report card, signed by both her teacher and her father. And this is her 8th grade diploma. On March 12, 1926, Thomas was injured when he was struck by a drunk hit-and-run driver. Fortunately, the injuries were not severe, and Laura was able to get the car's license number and report it to the town's marshal. On March 15, 1926, John Harris was charged with a felony for running down Thomas and then not stopping to render aid. The trial was set to begin on Friday, June 24, 1926. During the trial, witnesses, including Effie, stated they were walking on the side of East Yosemite Avenue near Elm Street when a car approached from the rear and ran down Thomas. The driver was later identified as Mr. Harris. Unfortunately, the jury failed to agree. The vote was 11 for conviction and 1 to dismiss. A retrial has been set for September 28, 1926. In the subsequent retrial, the jury convicted Mr. Harris of hit and run and sentenced him to 1 year in the county jail. This is Effie's note regarding a Mother's Day card sent to Laura and Thomas in 1926 by Jewel and Luther Norvell. The front reads, Mother's Day greeting to Father and Mother. The inside sentiment reads,
The love that grows the whole year through. Father and Mother dear for you. I want to send you both and say, my heart's with you this Mother's Day, that for each day in all the year, I wish you health and peace and cheer, and tell you that there is no day on which to God I do not pray, for sunshine and for gladness too. Father and Mother dear for you.
Here is another awesome picture from our family's collection. Left to right are Thomas, Bryce's son Dubby, emulating his Uncle Roy, who was always clowning around. Then Bryce, who is patching their Model A's flat tire. Based on the desert background, we think they were returning from a trip back from Arkansas. Also interesting is that we also think we know who took the photograph. Because in May of 1926, Ennis had purchased a new Ford touring car. The same type vehicle as in the picture. A saved newspaper clipping from December 4, 1927, showing that yesterday the triplets turned 16. On December 11, 1928, Thomas and Laura purchased portions of lots 19 and 20 of the Lancashire Colony addition to the city of Madera. Here is an earlier map of the Lancashire Colony when Madera was still part of Fresno County. In December of 1928, Effie won first prize for having the most popular of 68 dolls that were donated by high school girls for the Lions Club toy pile. Her doll was homemade, undoubtedly by Effie herself, and was unusual in many ways. In the 1930 census, we find Thomas, Laura, and the younger children living in the Story District in Madera County, California. Thomas is now 58 and Laura is 55. The only children still at home are 18-year-old Effie and Roy. Neither Robert or Forrest are present, nor can they be found in the 1930 census. However, we at least know where Robert was. He is living in Carmel, California, and working as a Western Union telegrapher. We can speculate that Robert received the inspiration for his occupation from the Smiths' next-door neighbor, O.K. Johnson. That is because Mr. Johnson's listed employment is telegraph operator. Velma, now 33, is living in Madera with her husband Fred, aged 34, and their daughter Mildred, who is 14. Also living in Madera are Ennis, age 27, his wife Ella, age 26, and their 11-month-old son Robert, who usually goes by Bobby. Bryce, here listed by his actual first name Walter, also resides in Madera. He is 28. His wife Elsie is 27, and their son Thomas, nicknamed Dubby, is 8. Also residing in the household is 23-year-old Ed Hodges, Elsie's brother. The two oldest children still remain in Clarksville, Arkansas. And both live on the very same street. Located at 402 Montgomery Street are Jewel and her husband, Luther Norvell, both listed as 36. Their daughter Bertie Lee is 16 and her sister Annie Laura is 10. Living with them in the same house are 83-year-old William Henry Poteet, Jewel's maternal grandfather, and his son James Andrew Poteet, aged 49. And living at 312 Montgomery Street are Bernas, aged 34, his wife Ruth, aged 32, and their son Harold, aged 10. And here are the triplets when they were going to high school in Madera, California. Left to right are Roy, Effie, and Robert. The following clippings examine incidents which occurred on the T.W. Smith Ranch east of Madera. This refers to 3 young Negroes who were charged with stealing a turkey from Thomas and then selling it on a wholesale scale in Fresno. The 3 were caught with one bird in their possession that Thomas later identified as just one of many that have disappeared from his ranch. General Sims, Vernon Filder, and H. Taylor plead not guilty to stealing the turkey on or about the night of December 22, 1931. They were each held on $250 bail, with their trial being set for January 15, 1932. At the trial, H. Taylor pled guilty to the charge of stealing the turkey from the ranch. Fiedler and Sims, the other 2 boys, continued to stick to their original stories of not guilty. Sentence will be passed on Taylor on Friday, January 15, 1932. H. Taylor and Vernon Filder were given 30 and 60-day sentences for their part in the turkey theft. However, the charge against General Sims was dismissed. But wait, apparently there was one more addition to the turkey stealing gang. As of February 8, 1932, George Johnson, Negro and ex-convict, was added to those previously charged with stealing Thomas's turkey on December 22. He entered a plea of not guilty, and his bail was set at $250. However, on Tuesday, February 16, 1932, that charge was dismissed. On Saturday, July 18, 1936, Laura fell and fractured her hip. The description of how it occurred was that Effie was going to accompany Velma to the bus depot, as Velma was going back to Avenal, California, where she lived and worked. Effie said Laura did not want to go, but because she begged her mother, Laura finally agreed to go along. While waiting for the bus, they had pie and coffee at the counter in the cafe. The stools were mounted on a raised area several inches above the cafe's floor. Laura did not realize that, and when stepping down, she fell and broke her hip. Effie said many times that she never forgave herself for begging her mother to go along on a trip that ended in such tragedy. On Tuesday, September 8, 1936, Laura passed away from complications due to her broken hip. Her funeral was held at 4:30 the afternoon of September 9, 1936. She was buried in the Arbor Vitae Cemetery in Madera. This photograph was taken following the service. Standing left to right are Robert, Ennis, George Tolliday, a close family friend, then Ella, wife of Ennis, Bryce, Elsie, Forrest, Helen, wife of Roy, and then Roy. Sitting in the front is Thomas. He and Laura had been married for 43 years and 3 months. This picture shows Laura's grave completely covered with flowers. And this is a bouquet of some of the actual flowers that were placed on Laura's grave. Effie preserved the arrangement in her cedar chest, where it remains to this day. It is amazing that the roses and ferns have retained their condition and color for almost 90 years. That is certainly a true treasure for the Smith family. On October 5, 1936, Thomas left with his daughter, Jewel Norvell, to drive back to Clarksville, Arkansas for a visit of several weeks. Thomas returned to Madera on December 23, 1936, after having visited with relatives and friends. Here are two obituaries for Thomas's mother, Serena Frances Talbot. She passed away at the age of 82 on July 11, 1937 in Clarksville, Arkansas, at the home of her daughter Effie Ferris, after only a few days with heart disease. Her last name is Talbot because after her first husband, Robert Smith, died in 1881, she married Sampson G. Talbot. And another awesome photograph from the family's collection showing Serena and Sampson inside their home in Ozone, Arkansas. And this is a studio portrait of Serena. Effie said that she was really very nice and not at all as stern as she appears in her photographs. On September 11th of 1937, Thomas somehow managed to once more get involved in an accident. Unbelievably, he was again struck by a car. Unfortunately, this time he was severely injured with bruises, a broken arm, and severe shock. He was in the hospital for 21 days until he was able to return home. We are sure he was stiff and sore for much longer until he was back to normal. During November of 1937, Thomas placed several classified ads in the Madera Tribune. They indicated that he had young leghorn pullets, as well as a fresh milk cow for sale at his ranch on Story Road east of Madera. On Easter in 1938, Thomas, assisted by Effie and her husband Kenneth, entertained guests with an Easter egg hunt and refreshments at the Webb home. The children present included Bobby, son of Ennis and Ella; Billy, son of Roy and Helen; Joyce, daughter of Forrest and Rose. Also attending was Barbara, daughter of Harry and Lois Caton. Lois is Kenneth's sister. Richard Haynes and Frances Hannah were the children of close friends of the Smith and Webb families. Moving on to the 1940 census, we find Thomas still living in Madera, California. He is listed as a 67-year-old widower and is renting a home next door to his son Bryce for $10 a month. Bryce, now 39, owns his home that is valued at $1,000. Also in the home is his wife Elsie, 37, and his son Thomas, aged 18. Remember that his nickname is Dubby. Also still in Madera are Ennis, 38, his wife Ella, 37, and their son Robert, who is 10. Remember that Robert is usually known as Bobby. Another Madera resident is Effie, aged 28, who is married to Kenneth Webb, aged 30. The final Smith family in Madera is Roy, aged 28. He, his wife Ellen, aged 24, and their 4-year-old son William are living in the home of Helen's father, George Rodosevich. The remaining triplet is Robert, who moved to Carmel, California. His name appears on the second line in the census, but it has been crossed out and no other information is provided. Forrest, age 34, is living just outside the city of Fresno, California. With him is his second wife Irene, age 23, and Forrest's daughter Joyce, age 10. Unfortunately, Velma cannot be located in the 1940 census. The two older children are still living in Clarksville, Arkansas. Here is Jewel, aged 46 with her husband Luther, also 46. And finally, there is Bernays, aged 44 with his wife Ruth, aged 42. And their children Harold 20, Martha 9, and Dorothy 7. This is a photograph of Thomas with his grandchild Richard, son of Effie Smith Webb, and his great-grandchild Tomalee, daughter of Dubby and Jenny Smith and grandchild of Bryce and Elsie. It was taken on February 15, 1948. This photograph, though undated, appears to have been taken during a Smith family outing in the late 1940s. Robert, Tom's son, is holding his son Robin. Then, at lower right is Richard, son of Effie Smith Webb. Thomas is sitting comfortably in the chair and is smoking his ever-present pipe. It was undoubtedly filled with Prince Albert tobacco. Now, we continue with Thomas in the 1950 census. He is living at 409 Vineyard Avenue in Madera and is a 78-year-old widower. However, his census data entry line is also sample line 14. Therefore, we also gain some additional information, such as he was living in the same house 1 year ago. His father was born in Ireland, and his mother was born in the United States. Second grade was the highest level he attended. He finished that grade. He is over 30 years of age, so he did not need to answer if he attended school in 1950. He spent 0 weeks looking for work. He did not work in 1949. He earned no money last year. Last year, he received $900 as income other than earnings. Last year, there was no salary income from relatives in his household. Last year, there was no net business or farm income from relatives in his household. He was not in the U.S. Armed Forces in World War II, World War I, or any other time, including the present. Bryce is also in Madera and is living at 524 North 8th Street. He is 49, and his wife Elsie is 47. He is employed as a welder at a farm equipment company. Effie, 38 years old, is living in Tulare, California with her husband Kenneth, aged 40, and her son Richard, age 5. Kenneth was born in California, and Richard was born in Florida. Kenneth is employed as a shipping clerk at a wholesale winery. Roy, now 38 years old, is living at 725 North G Street in Madera. With him is his wife Helen, 34 years old. She was born in Wisconsin. And their son William, who was born in California. He is 14 years old. Roy is employed as a welder at a farm equipment implement company. Robert, also obviously 38, is living in Carmel by the Sea, California with his wife Lily, 35 years old. His son Robin, 3 years old. And his daughter Deborah, 1 year old. Robert is owner of an automobile dealership. Forrest is now 45 years old and is living at 1233 M Street in Fresno, California. His wife Irene is 33 and was born in Texas. Forrest is the proprietor of a cocktail lounge. Velma, now 53, is living with her husband, Sam York, on a farm south of Fresno, California. Sam is 65 years old and was born in Tennessee. He is a farmer and owns his own farm. Jewel is 55 years old and is living in Clarksville, Arkansas, with her 56-year-old husband Luther Norvell. Luther is a carpenter and mason doing general construction work. Living next door is his son-in-law Lee Bates Johnson. Lee is 39 years old and is living with his wife Bertie Lee, who is 36 years old, and their daughters Sue, and aged 11, and Patricia Lee, who was born in June. Lee is a route salesman for a retail bread shop. Also in Clarksville at 312 Montgomery Street is Bernays. He is 54 and is living with his wife Ruth, aged 52, and their daughters Martha, aged 19, and Dorothy, aged 17. Bernas is employed as an auto mechanic in a garage repair shop. Across Montgomery, on Reynolds Street, is the home of their son Harold, who is 29 years old. His employment is listed as a motel manager for a tourist motel. On January 8, 1950, Thomas was honored on his 78th birthday at the home of his son Bryce. Elsie served a turkey dinner, which was followed by presenting gifts to Thomas. Those present besides the host and hostess were Ennis, Ella, and their son Bobby, Roy and Bill Smith, Effie and Kenneth Webb and their son Richard, and Velma and Sam York. And now we come to the final chapter of our story. On October 11, 1959, Thomas died at a local hospital following a lingering illness. He left behind 6 sons, 3 daughters, 13 grandchildren, 13 great-grandchildren, 2 great-great-grandchildren, and 2 sisters. He was buried in the Arbor Vitae Cemetery in Madera. This is a scan of the first page in Thomas's personal Bible. He signed this when he was living in Antioch, Johnson County, Arkansas. And here he has listed the names and dates of births and deaths of his children. On this page, he recorded the birth and death dates of his grandchildren, as well as some of his great-grandchildren. In early 1960, Bryce, as administrator of Thomas's estate, placed several advertisements in the Madera newspaper, giving notice to all to file their claims with Mason Bailey, the attorney handling the matter. This interesting item was discovered when researching Thomas on the Internet. His name came up linked to the California State Controller's Office list of unclaimed property. Apparently, either the family did not know about this insurance policy or did not make application for it following Thomas's death. Therefore, as of 2025, the state of California is holding $241 under property ID 886258 from the Standard Mutual Life Insurance Company that is due Thomas's estate. And now, we will end this video with this photograph of Thomas and Laura's headstone.